Okay, welcome back to the Roadmap to Retirement. I am your host, Alex Neary. It is a new year. We're about 2 weeks into January, so we're excited to get started in another year.
This is Roadmap to Retirement. Tune in for financial tips, investment strategies, and smart money moves to supercharge your retirement savings. Alex Neary, CFP, and guests are here to help you build your roadmap to retirement.
We've got a lot of great feedback the past few years, so thank you to all our listeners who have supported us and given us some information to go on going forwards, make adjustments. I think in 2026, you're going to hear a lot more from me individually, more of these solo episodes. In the past, we did a lot of episodes hosted where I was the host, bringing a guest on, talking about different areas. We still want to do that going forward, but the people have asked for more of me, so here I am. So I thought we'd cover a couple different topics today. The one I want to start with is a cool story that I've read in a few different places. It's come up in more than one book I've read, and I don't know who originally wrote the story or come up with this. Otherwise, I'd give them credit. But it's basically the story of, I've seen it phrased different ways, but we'll call it the Mexican fisherman story. So the premise of the story is that there's a big important businessman from New York City, goes down to Mexico on vacation, and he meets a fisherman while he's there. He's talking to the fisherman, and he learns about his lifestyle and learns that the fisherman goes out fishing a couple hours a day, catches enough to feed himself and his family, and then spends the rest of the day playing music, dancing, enjoying life. And the businessman looks at this and says, wow, what you should do, you're really efficient these 2 hours. Why don't you fish for 8 hours a day? You'll make more money. You can sell some fish, make money from your family, save it, invest it, and then someday you can retire. And the fisherman says, what would I do when I retire with all this money? Then what? And the businessman says, then once you have all this money and you've retired, then you can spend time dancing and singing and playing music like you had been. And it gives you pause. And the point of the story, of course, and nothing super original, is if the fisherman could spend his entire life doing the things he wants to do, why would he dedicate himself solely to collecting money to then start to live 30 years from now the lifestyle he wants to? And again, I've read it more than once. I thought it was an interesting idea, and it circles back to a lot of things that we talk about in financial planning. And it's always if we're setting this goal, what is the point of that? If our goal is to retire, it seems pretty obvious. We want to spend more time with our friends and family. But if our goal is to work 90-hour weeks so that one day we can have more money, drive the car, have a big house, you start to get to what is the point of all this? And I think for a lot of people as they progress in their career, and I'd include myself in this, there's been times in my career where I had been willing to go above and beyond with the idea of if I can do this, then I'll make this money and have something that I can be proud of, but also it would afford me a certain lifestyle. So something to think about with your financial goals is, what is the purpose behind it? Is it truly something that you should be sacrificing your time and energy towards? Or are you better off spending time with your friends and family doing things that you enjoy doing now? Not to get all philosophical with you, but I think it's a cool story. I've seen it in a few places, so I thought I would include that in today's episode. Now, this time of year, we get a lot of people who they either read things online, they watch videos. Of course, there's a ton of content out there, including myself. And we start to get into this market prediction space, meaning that it's a new year, 2026. And if you Google 2026 market predictions, you're going to get all kinds of different information from some people that are very credible. They might be a large investment firm. They might be somebody with a lot of letters after their name. They might have a PhD in something, economics, whatever it is. And they want to tell you that in 2026, the market is going to do fill in the blank. And you also hear some people that are just entertainers. There's people that are, I'm not going to name any names, but they have pretty famous shows and YouTube channels and everything else. And they get clicks by saying outlandish things of this is what's going to happen. Or you see a lot of doomsday predictions. We see people out there every year without fail that say, this time is different. Here comes the biggest recession from 2008, since 2008. Do this to protect your money now, buy gold, buy silver, whatever it is. So you want to be careful of those. If you're seeing things out there that sound like wild predictions, it's because they probably are. So what do we do with that? It's not just me going on the podcast to debunk that and tell you not to listen to those people. One of them will be right. At some point, one of them will be right. Just like a broken clock is right twice a day, so are the market predictions. If you predict the doomsday scenario every year for 20 years, eventually you're going to be correct. If you predict 20% return on the S&P 500, sometimes you're going to be pretty close, if not right. So what do we do with that information? I think the big thing for investors is make sure that whatever the philosophy you're following today can hold up in any condition. So if you think that you're an aggressive investor, and we see this a lot, I have people come in that They've got their retirement accounts, their life savings. Oh yeah, Alex, I'm aggressive. I like to take risk. And really what they mean is they've enjoyed the benefits of that risk in the past, and they think they'd like to enjoy the benefits of that risk into the future. But then fast forward, they come back in 6 months later, maybe the market's not doing so well, and you can tell they're nervous. They're sweating a little bit. We saw this most recently, almost a year ago, when we had the trade tariff stuff going on. We saw people who previously identified themselves as an aggressive investor now come back and say, oh no, my account's down X amount, and they're in a panic. So whatever your investment philosophy is today, it should be the same going forward. If you see yourself as an aggressive investor, that's true today. That should have also been true a year ago. It should have been true back in April when things were going on. Try to battle test that a little bit. And part of that also is not only am I an aggressive investor, what does that mean for me at my stage of life? There's really two components. There's how much risk are you comfortable with, meaning what can you stomach when the market goes down? But there's also this piece of what's your time horizon. If you say you're just a naturally aggressive person, but you're in your 70s, that should mean something different than someone that's an aggressive person in their 30s. So we really want to make sure that we're time segmenting our investments. So if you have money that you're going to use next week, it should be more conservative. You don't need me to tell you that. You've heard that in a million other places. To give you real world examples, a couple of clients I was working with recently, they have aspirations of buying a house. They want to buy a new home, sell the home they're in. And to do that with the real estate market the way it is, with the liquid cash they have, they're probably going to need to pull something from their investments to buy this next home, whether it's for a down payment or maybe they don't want to have a mortgage. Doesn't really matter. But with them, we've decided to make them a lot more conservative. We said, okay, you're going to buy a house in the next year. We're going to need some of that money. We've enjoyed gains in the past. We've enjoyed our appreciation. The market's gone up, it's treated us well. But we can't put ourselves in a situation where 6 months from now, if you go to pull money out, the market's down 20%, that you're going to sell at a 20% loss. We're okay with today taking some of that money, putting it in something a little bit more conservative, so that if we do dip into it, we've got the money to go to then, and we're not selling at a loss. Now, with that, what if this person is now concerned that they've seen the market run up the last 6 months? Their advisor told them to sit in cash, go into fixed income, something more conservative. And now they're saying, hey, Alex, look, the market's done really well the last 6 months. I wish I was part of that. That can be equally as hard to stomach as loss, knowing that you had this opportunity cost. You chose to get more conservative. You had good reason to do, but because you didn't stay more aggressive, you now missed out on thousands of dollars in gains. Unfortunately, that's part of investing. I would much rather have that person be conservative, have the money to do what they need to do. And then once they get through that stage of life where they're buying the house and their investments are now more in a long-term bucket, their expenses have leveled off, they know what they can expect going forward, then moving things back into something that's more aggressive with the understanding that we're not going to touch this for 10 years like we originally planned, I think makes a ton of sense. So the psychology of investing can be interesting. Now, the next piece of this is, what about younger investors? So I'm talking about somebody that's retired, they want to buy a house. What if I'm 35 years old and I'm thinking about, my retirement, I save. I live in a world where I can go on my phone anytime, any day, and I can look at the most up-to-date information about my investments. So it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's nice that we have the technology that you can go in, you can check these things. But what we see more often is people that are checking every day habitually. They check their investments every single day, and they're thinking about it, whether or not they're losing sleep over it or whether they think it is stressing them out. A lot of times it is causing some level of stress and discomfort to know that my account's up or down 1% today, even though I'm 35 years old and I'm not going to touch this money for another 3 decades, maybe. So what do you say to that person? I guess I tell them not to look, but it's hard to do that. I think one thing that can create a barrier is you delete the app off your phone. I know this is a good trick for a lot of people that have a shopping problem. I've heard people say, I spend too much money on Amazon.com because it's so easy. I can go on my phone, I open the app, they've already got my credit card information in there. I see something I want, I click, it's on my porch in 2 days. So one easy way to create a barrier to this habit is have a rule where you don't have the Amazon app on your phone. It doesn't mean you can't use Amazon, doesn't mean you can't shop, but it just means that if you want to go buy something, you need to pull up your laptop, open a browser, go to Amazon.com, type in your password, unless it's saved in your browser, which it probably is, but type in your password and then go buy that thing. And by creating that barrier, it makes that behavior a little bit less likely. Where did I start on this? We're talking about your investments. Same thing if you have a habit of checking your investments too much. Delete the LPL app, the Fidelity app, whoever you use, off your phone, and then you're not tempted to check it as frequently. And by doing that, the real point in this is by doing that, you're probably more likely to make better investment decisions because you are not panic selling. There's a lot of studies out there on this. I know JP Morgan has one, and it talks about the rate of return in the market. And I think they use the S&P 500, doesn't matter, but the rate of return in the market. And then they show the rate of return of the average investor. And it's like the market does 9% and the average investor does something like 2%. Don't quote me on those numbers, they're definitely wrong. But the point is that if the average investor is doing 7% worse than the market, why is that? It's not because the average investor has access to different investments, right? We all have access to the same stuff. It's simply because of the psychology behind it, because they're checking their investments, they're trying to time the market, which is never successful, almost never successful. They're trying to time the market, they're trying to meddle in their investments more than they should. And by doing that, they're hurting themselves in the long run. So to the 35-year-old investor who gets worked up about this, or maybe they don't even think they get worked up about this, but they start to overthink it and they start to make decisions based on that, I think the best thing you can do for yourself is not look. Delete the app off your phone. You can go back to paper statements if you want to. Check the quarterly paper statement. Maybe check once a year. Maybe it's only twice a year when you meet with your financial advisor, you're really thinking about this stuff. But there's really no benefit in watching your investments. As ridiculous as that sounds, I think some people think it would be bad or a mistake to not look. But if you're set up correctly and you're confident in your investments, you chose them for a reason, there's not a lot of value in checking every day. So that's one question we get quite a bit of. Another fun question that surfaced recently. I have a bit of a LinkedIn presence. If you don't follow me there, check it out. But I posed a question that came to me organically. I was talking to somebody over Christmas time period, not Christmas Day, but over that time period. And they were talking about somebody they knew that lost money in a parking lot. They fell out of their pocket and they lost a substantial amount of money, and the gut wrench. And it got me thinking, what's worse? Is it worse to lose money in that fashion where maybe, let's pick a dollar amount, $1,000. You're walking around with $1,000 in your pocket, $1,000 bills. Math is hard sometimes. $1,000 bills fall out of your pocket. You lose $1,000. You don't know where it goes. It's lost in the parking lot. You search for hours, can't find it. It's gone. Bad feeling in your gut. Compare that to, I lost $1,000 gambling. So let's say I go to the casino, I sit down at the blackjack table, I pull out the same $1,000. I put all $1,000 on one hand of blackjack because I'm feeling confident, I'm in a rush, and I lose that hand. So I've lost $1,000 gambling. Or hypothetically, I bought, let's use a penny stock to make it fun. I bought $1,000 of some penny stock, some small company no one's ever heard of, but I had insider information, not really. I had information that made me think that they were going to do well. So I put $1,000 into this penny stock, and that went to zero. Company went out of business. I lost all $1,000. What's the worst feeling to you? And think about that for a minute. Is it losing money where it falls out of your pocket? Is it sit down, gamble for 5 minutes, lose $1,000? Or is it invest $1,000, in this case, a single stock that goes to zero? And I got a couple different answers on this. One point that was brought up that I hadn't thought of before posting this was the idea that if I lose $1,000 in a parking lot, it's likely that somebody else found that money. And if they found that money, maybe they're having a hard time, maybe they're not, doesn't matter. But that money went to something good, and hopefully it helps somebody that needed help. So that's cool. That was a good answer. Other considerations, some of my tax nerd friends, accountants, and other financial advisors quickly came to the answer that if I had lost $1,000 in the stock market, I can use that as a capital loss. So I could hold that against a capital gain, and there's actually a tax benefit to losing money on a stock. So to them, they thought that was better. But what I was really getting after with the question was I wanted to know the gut reaction, not how you justify it financially or how you justify it to maybe it's helped somebody else. But like in the moment when you realize you lost $1,000, what's the worst feeling? I guess to me, the worst feeling would be losing in a parking lot, which I'm struggling with now because somebody brought up the point about helping somebody else, which I think is great. But when I lose in the parking lot, it feels like it was purely accidental. It could not have been prevented, and that kind of stings. Whereas if I choose to gamble, I'm accepting some risk, like that I might lose money doing that. Or if I put money into a single stock, I know that I'm also accepting some risk there. So I don't know, I thought it was an interesting question. I thought that I would share that. And I'm curious if you're listening to this and have your own opinion, what you might weigh in on with that. Before we wrap up, I think what I want to do going forward is make a point of every podcast to bring up one question that I think you should be asking your financial advisor. And this came organically also. I have a list of questions that it's in a PDF form or I print it off. And usually on a first meeting with a prospective new client, I hand out this list of questions that I think that they should ask if they're talking to myself or if they're going out and interviewing other financial advisors. Now, that list is a little bit self-serving because, of course, they take it out to another financial advisor who's probably not prepared or just not as good as me, and they don't have as buttoned up of questions as I do. So the question I'll share today is one that I've been talking about a little bit, is what does your process look like? So when you meet with a financial advisor for the first time, I want to know what their onboarding process looks like, but I also want to know what their client communication process looks like. So it's as simple as, you can phrase it different ways. I like to call it a client communication schedule. So you could ask the advisor, could you share your client communication schedule with me? You might also call it a review schedule or something like that. But the point is, if I'm a client and I'm investing money with you as a financial advisor, how often am I going to hear from you? And how are you reaching out? Is it proactive? Do I need to call you when I need something? So I think that's a really good question to ask. I can tell you what we do ourselves, and maybe there's other financial advisors listening to this that want to steal this. I have no problem with that. I do something called surge meetings, which I stole from Matthew Jarvis. I don't have any original ideas, but the idea is that I meet with my clients twice a year and I do them in batches. And for a couple of reasons. One, for my own organization, but also I think it's really important to meet around the tax calendar. No, I'm not a CPA. No, I don't file taxes, but talking to somebody in the spring when they are filing their taxes means that finances are at top of their mind. And there's also some things we can do as a financial advisor that need to be done by April 15th. And then talking to people again in the fall, we can get into tax loss harvesting, Roth conversions, RMDs, and a lot of things that can only be done in the fall and need to be done by December 31st. So all of my clients hear from me right around tax time. So usually March, April-ish, and then again in October or November. So every single one of my clients knows that we're going to proactively reach out to them in that time period to schedule a meeting to sit down in person, sometimes on Zoom in the modern world, and review their finances, give some advice as to what we can do by those given deadlines, and make sure we're staying in contact. In addition to that, recognizing that sometimes people have questions in between, sometimes there's other things throughout the year that make changes to their finance, we do touch base calls in between. So in January, we do a New Year's touch base call. That is not me calling people. That is us scheduling a time to talk on the phone, which I think is important. I don't want to call somebody when they're walking through the grocery store and they've got a million things on their mind. I want them to know that I'm going to call them at 1:30 on Tuesday. We're going to talk for 15 minutes. We're going to get caught up for anything that's changed in their finances. And it gives us an opportunity to tee up the next meeting. So if I'm talking to you in January and I know that we're going to meet in March, I can say, hey, we're meeting in March. What are some things that you want to make sure we have on the agenda for that meeting? And sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes they come back to me and say, oh, nothing's really changed, but I'm looking forward to seeing you in March. We'll talk to you then. Other times it's, hey, Alex, I know I said that I was going to retire in 3 years, but the job's not going great right now. I really want your thoughts when we get together in March about what it would look like if I retired this summer. Or, hey, something happened with the house. We're actually going to need $30,000 for a remodel. What's the best place for me to take it from? It's not an emergency. We don't need to do it today, but let's get it on the radar so when we do meet in March, we can talk about it. Got off the rails a little bit there. So we have our January call, and then the other call we do is in July, which is a busy time of year for a lot of people. Hopefully we're taking trips and doing different things, but it allows us to similarly do one quick touch base, a 15-minute phone call. Hey, what's changed? Probably nothing, but sometimes we get into things have changed. I want to make sure it's on the agenda for the fall. So that's the basics of our client communication schedule. There's some other things, newsletters, mailers, things that go in between there. But I find that by proactively reaching out 4 times a year, we can stay on top of what our clients have going on in their lives, personally and financially. We can stay ahead of any issues, which I think is where a lot of advisors make a mistake, is by the time they're reaching out and talking to their client, something's already happened, something's already changed, and they miss the window. So we want to make sure that we're staying ahead of it in that fashion. So yeah, that was the question for this week's podcast was, what does your client communication schedule look like? That's my answer. If you're an advisor listening to this, feel free to steal that. If you are not a financial advisor listening to this and you're just a regular person, you're a client of mine, client of someone else's, and you have questions on that, feel free to reach out. But that's it. Thank you for tuning in. We look forward to a great 2026 and hope to talk to you all soon. Thanks.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Individual tax or legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional.